Hundreds of Shiite Muslim protesters clash with Nigerian police during a second day of protests in Abuja. The World Health Organization and UNICEF issue new guidelines to promote breastfeeding. And how farmers are using high-tech tools to monitor cows. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tensions are high in Nigeria tonight. Police fired tear gas at hundreds of Shia Muslim protesters during a second day of clashes in the capital Abuja. Demonstrators are demanding the release of Shia leader Ibrahim Zakizaki. His supporters have held regular peaceful protests in the capital in recent months. They're now pushing for Zakizaki's release after a court ruled his detention is illegal. Zakizaki is the leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria. He's been in jail without charge since December 2015, when hundreds of his followers were killed in a security forces crackdown. Zakizaki's movement is estimated to have 3 million members. The 2015 crackdown and Zakizaki's subsequent detention prompted accusations that President Muhammadu Buhari's government is abusing human rights. It has also sparked fears that the group could become radicalized, the same way Sunni Muslim militant group Boko Haram turned into a violent insurgence in 2009 after police killed its leader. The Central African Republic is in the grips of humanitarian crisis with no end in sight. Thousands of people displaced from their homes by years of violence are now either internally displaced or living as refugees in neighboring countries. And they are all heavily dependent on humanitarian assistance. In the past week alone, at least 21 people were killed and 135 others injured in the worst outbreak of violence in years. The country descended into turmoil after mainly Muslim Seleka rebels ousted President Francois Bozize in 2013, provoking retaliation killings by anti-Balaka militias drawn largely from Christian communities. Self-styled Muslim self-defense groups sprung up, claiming to protect the Muslim civilians concentrated there from ethnic cleansing. The United Nations in the CAR accuses both groups of extortion and violence against civilians. Now, several non-government organizations are working to help the people of the CAR. To tell us more about what that work involves, I'm joined in studio by Sam Gaza, Vice President of Ruti Centrafrique. Mr. Gaza, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So first, the name is a little interesting. Why?
Ruti Centrafrique, it means the roots of Central Africa.
Great. Now, tell us exactly what you do. We know that there have been international organizations there, including the United Nations, trying to help the thousands of Central Africans who are either displaced within the country or in neighboring countries. What is it that your organization wants to do there or is doing there?
So we're an organization that was founded by Central Africans. I mean, our organization is spread around the world, and there's many Central Africans around the world that look at this crisis and they see, you know, it started out as a sectarian war between Muslims and Christians, but over time it's translated into a war of economic stimulus, you know, economic opportunity, and that's what our organization is about. You know, we're looking to stimulate, be the private sector, or to do something in the private sector to create economic stimulus in the country. You know, we have a contract with the Central African Ministry of Habitat to build 500 socioeconomic homes. And along with that, we're going to be building a brick manufacturing plant. And in parallel with that, we also have a learning center that we have planned to build in Bangui, so we can actually train these workers to actually start building their own homes. And so that, in partnership with our UNHCR partners, we have plans to start bringing some of those refugees back into Bangui so they can repatriate and where they can have jobs.
So first, what you're saying you're doing is the kind of work that is done in a process of recovery of a country, which requires some level of stability. Are the conditions in the country ripe for that kind of level of stable development?
You know, many people are looking at the government to create jobs. And we all know that the government's not in the position to create jobs. You know, this is where the private sector comes in to start stimulating that economy. You know, and if that never happens, then the insecurity will never subside.
So what's your target here? I mean, we mentioned that there are people who are living in refugee camps outside of the country and those who are displaced within the country. So when you go in right now, Who are you talking to? Who are you working with?
We are made up of 4 NGOs on the ground, and our Vice President of Operations in Bangui, Mr. Gideon Goatee, he's actually he's the coordinator for humanitarian relief efforts in Bangui. And so we have capacity on the ground to actually start implementing these programs.
Yeah. So when you start implementing those programs, are you looking at, helping individuals, or do you go to a community and encourage them to come together in some kind of outfit that helps to generate whatever funding or programs to that particular area?
We have to start small. And, this is where this learning center comes in. We can only build as big as we move, and so there's nobody else doing this. And so we're pioneering the effort. And we've been called from many professionals around the world that are Central African citizens saying, lead the charge. And once you start moving, we will start moving too. And so we want to create that snowball effect.
So you're creating skills, you're talking about.
We are creating skills.
Learning center.
The Learning Center will create skills, vocational training for the construction effort, also working with the Chamber of Commerce there in the city to fill the gap. There's a huge gap there, and it's, the skills gap. And so that's what this Learning Center is going to do.
So this is not the kind of humanitarian assistance which is kind of just parachuting in there, giving people food and certain immediate assistance. You're talking about a kind of a long-term programs which help these people to become self-reliant. Is that what you're
Absolutely. That's what we want to do. We don't want to be a program of one-and-done program. We want to actually start create economic stimulus. That way it starts solving and creates long-term solutions. Our motto is together we can. We can't do this alone. We need international donors. We need the private sector to come together. We need the professionals that actually have gone out left the country for one reason or another to come back in to start creating that opportunity. And then only then will you also start getting some semblance of normality.
Now, the people are suffering quite a bit. Are those in refugee camps or in IDPs? They're still there. There's a reason why they're not going back to their homes. How do you help them? How do you convince them to go back?
So we want to start where it's secure in the city of Bangui.
Yeah.
And as people start to see some movement, it's a cascading effect.
So you're saying in Bangui, it is stable and peaceful enough for you to run your operations and to use that as a way to pull in back people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How about those other areas far-flung from the city of Bangui, where most people come from? Because we're talking about people want to go back to their rural home, to their neighborhoods, not necessarily to Bangui.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is we went out to Cameroon, to the eastern region. We spoke to a lot of refugees, and the only thing they want is to go back home. But, one thing we tell them is when you go back home, there's no economic stability. There's no homes to go back to. And so how can we help as an organization? What's feasible? What can we implement? And that's where it's safe. We have our operations on the ground, Mr. Goatee, and he gives us reports every day. There was a recent PK5 where they went into the PK5 neighborhood and they tried to clean out, the guns there. But, the thing is here in the West, we actually hear about the bad things. We never really hear about the day-to-day, life, And when I went to Cameroon, I noticed that people are just like me. They go to work every day and they come home. They're so peaceful. It's such a docile society. And whenever you allow a mindset of division to take root, it gets into the culture,
Yeah.
And so that's one thing we want to curb. We want to be that semblance of peace and stability.
And we really hope there will be peace in Central African Republic. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Gaza, for coming on today and sharing those kind of assessments with us.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing, and for people to visit our website, it's www.rudy-centerfric.org to find out a little bit more information about us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, and that's Sam Gaza, who is the Vice President, Rudy Centrafrique. To East Africa now, Somalia's semi-autonomous Puntland region is urging the United Arab Emirates not to close its security operations in the country. This follows a dispute between the UAE and Somalia's central government. The standoff goes to the heart of a troubled relationship between Gulf states with their own and an already fractured Somalia, whose coastline sits close to key shipping routes. Last Wednesday, the Somali government said it would take over a military training program run by the UAE. Days later, the UAE announced it was pulling out, accusing Mogadishu of seizing millions of dollars from a plane at a Mogadishu airport, money the UAE says was meant to pay soldiers. The Somali government now says it has opened talks with the United Arab Emirates aimed at resolving the diplomatic spat. What happens when an unexpected event changes everything? Africa 54's Imoitinyan Ujagbe tells us the story of a young woman from Ghana who thrives and helps others in the face of adversity.
While attending boarding school in Pennsylvania, the life of 18-year-old Elizabeth Patterson was forever changed. She was involved in a terrible automobile accident.
The minivan, the school van that we were in, just crashed, and all 6 other students, there were 7 of us in total, 6 other people got thrown out of the van, and unfortunately I was left in the van from the waist down, and then the van fell on top of my head.
Patterson spent more than a year in the hospital, and while recovering, she decided to complete her education.
I finished high school. I graduated high school basically in the hospital with tutoring from these wonderful teachers.
A Ghanaian native, Elizabeth emigrated with her family to the United States when she was just 10 years old to seek more educational opportunities.
Education is important to me because it saved my life, #1. And it was the reason why my family, my parents, told me and my sister that we're leaving Ghana.
While studying in South Africa, researching educational opportunities for girls, Patterson realized that students with disability did not have access to the same opportunities as others.
I changed my research from girls' education in South Africa to how students or people with special needs or disabilities are able to access K through 12 education.
Her passion for learning, combined with her hunger for an inclusive society, encouraged her to create her own non-profit organization called Girls Education Initiative of Ghana. Among her students are girls with disabilities.
We provide academic financial scholarships so the kids, the girls, could go to school and remain in school.
According to the Let Girls Learn Foundation, there are 62 million girls worldwide that are not enrolled in school, and millions more are fighting to stay there.
I mean, we're trying to extend to others in the community and be more inclusive, not just of like the inclusion that we already offer of the girls and the students with special needs, but also extend our programming to boys who may otherwise feel left out.
In spite of being left with physical challenges stemming from the accident, Patterson wants her GEIG girls and the world to know that disability is not an inability.
So I don't think about the things that I can't do. I just look at what I can do in spite of or because of my current situation and the body that I have acquired as a result of this accident.
A UN report says 650 million people around the world live with some form of disability. They are the world's largest minority group. Women with disability face unique challenges because of their gender and lack of access to adequate resources. Imoitinya Ugiagbe for VOA News, Washington.
Very inspiring, that story. Now, the Africa 54 team is always thrilled when we reach out, you reach out to us to let us know what you think about us and the stories we cover. We recently asked on our social media channels, what are the challenges girls face in Africa? And we keep receiving a lot of comments. Abdul Kadir Ayon from Mogadishu in Somalia writes, a culture of traditional mindset, short of knowledge and skills, all this leads to economic unfreedom, you say, as he puts it. On the other hand, Katende Ronald from Uganda believes that the solution for improving the lives of girls in Africa lies at the local level. Well, I think we can do something if you coordinate with the local leaders and the church. You're right, Katende, for change to take place, local leaders have to be on the same page, but also political leaders need to demonstrate their commitment to improving the conditions of members of their community. And it's always very rewarding to get encouraging messages from you. Yesterday, Frank reached out to us from Lagos, Nigeria, and said, your news is very continental. I love to watch your news every day. Your updates are very true. Keep it up. Thank you, Frank, for your kind remarks, and keep them coming. Reach out to us on Facebook. It's VOA Africa 54. And don't forget, we stream our show live every day. Follow me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, coming up, we'll tell you why breastfeeding could be the key to saving thousands of lives. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Well, joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu. What do you have for us today, Lino?
Well, the World Health Organization and UNICEF have issued new guidelines to increase support for breastfeeding in health facilities that provide maternity and newborn services. The new 10-step guidance describes practical ways countries can protect, promote and support breastfeeding in hospitals. They provide the immediate health system platform to help mothers initiate breastfeeding within the first hour and breastfeed exclusively for 6 months. According to UNICEF, breastfeeding is vital to a child's lifelong health and reduces costs for health facilities, families, and governments. Breastfeeding within the first hour of birth protects newborn babies from infections and saves lives. The WHO says breastfeeding in the first 2 years would save the lives of more than 820,000 children under the age of 5 every year.
It is extremely important, one, because breastfeeding protects lives. Breastfeeding is saving thousands of children's lives every year, year in, year out. It also promotes healthy growth in children. Children grow taller. Children are less likely to be overweight and obese later in life. It promotes brain development, but it also protects women's health and the health of mothers. Breastfeeding is associated, for example, with a lower risk of ovarian cancer, breast cancer, and diabetes in women. So there are many reasons to protect and promote breastfeeding.
And UNICEF Chief of Nutrition Victor Agayo says women who choose to breastfeed should be supported where and when they need to breastfeed, whether in public, private, or the workplace. Now, if cancer is suspected in a patient, surgeons will most likely have to remove some of the suspected tissue and test it. Getting the results could be a long process. A new invention called a mass spec pen could cut the wait time to just seconds. VOA's Elizabeth Lee reports from Austin, Texas, where the pen was created.
One touch of this pen can detect cancer almost immediately.
Well, it's a game changer because I was doing a case the other day with a surgeon and we had to wait an additional 2 hours because the current method takes that long.
Aiden Zahadivash is a medical student and co-creator of the mass spec pen. He says the pen can deliver cancer results within 20 seconds and is much less invasive for the patient than the traditional method of confirming the disease.
That process usually will involve taking out some of the tissue, which means cutting it from a patient. Our technology can detect cancer inside of a tissue without cutting it or altering it.
A drop of water on the pen pulls molecules from the suspected cancerous tissue during surgery. This instrument, called a mass spectrometer, then analyzes the water to determine whether cancer is present. It adds precision to detecting cancer. In seconds, surgeons will know what part of the tissue to excise, how much to cut, and what not to cut, so healthy tissue isn't damaged.
We've done testing on human tissues that have been taken out of patients, and those have shown 96% accuracy detecting cancer from not cancer.
Newly available technologies have allowed an interdisciplinary team to develop this pen in 2.5 years.
We've 3D printed all the prototyping, which allowed us to rapidly develop a design that worked.
Zahedjevash says within the year, the mass spec pen will be tested in surgery at the Dell Medical School at the University of Texas at Austin. There are also plans to test this technology at MD Anderson Cancer Center and Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Austin.
Now get this, Auntie Caterina. She may not be your auntie, but she's a regular taxi driver who offers free rides to cancer patients in the Italian city of Florence. She inherited the taxi when her partner died of cancer 17 years ago. She says this is her way of honoring his legacy. To show the gratitude and support of the Tuscany region, Caterina has been named its Solidarity Ambassador in recognition of her work. VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo reports.
In her colorful car decorated with drawings, Caterina Belandi, known as Auntie Caterina, offers free rides to people with cancer. The idea came about when she lost her partner Stefano to lung cancer.
My beloved one was a taxi driver, and he left me his cab. Celebrating his life, honoring his path of suffering, his ordeal, means to celebrate the lives I meet, who also experience ordeal and suffering.
The 53-year-old cab driver has spent years helping sick children and adults. She says parents, in particular, feel lost when their children are diagnosed with the illness.
Auntie's job is to open the doors of suffering with the hope of being able to share it. I can't save everybody from suffering. I can just share it, like death. Death is inevitable, but it is possible to share it when we are alive, and we can learn to die better.
Many cancer patients are forced to leave their hometowns to seek treatment. In Florence, 22-year-old Erica Scacadi lives 2 hours away and is being treated for brain cancer.
When I see Auntie Caterina during my treatment, she drives me around, and she has given me a lot of love, even if I didn't need that, because my parents were there. But she has helped me shut out what was going on.
Among her other passengers are Moira and her daughter Angelica, who was diagnosed with cancer when she was just 10 months old.
Auntie Caterina is a lot of things to us. She never leaves us. When we came here, we didn't know anybody. She's our family now.
Angelica's cancer is in remission, but she comes to Florence 3 times a year for MRI scans. Belandi welcomes them into the cab where Angelica can find books and toys to play with.
She taught me that at the end of the tunnel there was always a light, and I found the strength to keep going down the tunnel, and we did that, and we have found our light, which is Angelica's recovery.
The decorations on Auntie Caterina's taxi represent children she's met over the years. She calls them superheroes, and Angelica is depicted as a little mouse in a purple dress holding a stuffed animal. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
How about that for making an impact? Well, that's our health report for today, so stay in touch for more. Find me on Twitter @LenormeDou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, and thank you very much for joining us today, Lino. Be sure to watch for LenormeDou every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa, right here on Africa 54. Well, it's now time for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, making mass-scale farming more efficient with high tech. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. How do farmers know what is going on when they have 2,000 cows to watch over? The answer? Artificial intelligence. Exhibit A, the intelligent dairy farmer's assistant that goes around a cow's neck. The device uses a Google platform called TensorFlow. It feeds data into a so-called neural network that recognizes patterns. It helps farmers identify cows that are sick, less productive, or ready for breeding. A cow's health is important because farmers say a healthy cow produces more milk. Meanwhile, the moo call calving sensor sends an alert when cows are about to give birth by detecting contractions in the cow's tail, allowing farmers to be present should there be complications. Well, next up, in an underground discotheque hidden in Seoul, hundreds of elderly couples in the afternoon dancing to local hits from the 1960s. Named after cola being served at discos, Colatex, one face of South Korea's rapidly aging population, as a growing number of lonely, impoverished and ailing people rediscover ways to entertain themselves after decades of hard work. They are the generation that has helped to rebuild Asia's fourth largest economy from the ruins of the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. They are also now the most depressed and impoverished among member countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Colatex began to spring up in the late 1990s as a club for the teens, but started to attract the elderly from the mid to late 2000s. And finally, about 200 aspiring exorcists are in Rome for a week-long course in casting out demons, including by cell phone if necessary, amid increased demand for the service among Roman Catholics. Participants will attend lectures and talks on a range of topics, including witchcraft, how to tell the difference between demonic possession and mental illness, as well as a step-by-step guide to casting out demons. Students will receive a certificate which will not entitle them to cast out demons. Only priests can perform exorcism, and only with their bishop's permission or a license. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the morning today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
I got thrown into mobile app development towards like 2010, where I created an app that went viral in Nigeria. Gender